This is a special evening for all of us, for our beloved friend, Costas. And we have scheduled a program for you to remember. Please sit down. Yeah, thank you, Nikolai. We need a Russian in such cases. Okay. So Maria and I put together, actually she did most of the job, thank you, in which we will have a few friends, especially Professor Economo, to talk about Costas, and then some of us have some slides. We have a lineup, like 7 or 8 people. Some people will join from YouTube, Zoom. We also, are we live on YouTube and Zoom now? I don't know, technicians, okay. Zoom, yeah. And at the end, if any of you have a few things to say about Costas, you are welcome to the podium. So I will let now Maria take over, then I will take back again. Maria, your turn.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to see you here, although the event is not pleasant. In this session, we would like to remember Costas as colleague, friend, mentor, boss, teacher. For some of us, he has played more than one role. As for me, for example, he has played almost all these roles. And for many people, like the people shown in the picture here, who are close students of Costas and close friends and colleagues. And actually, it's we all are grateful to Costas for everything he has offered to us. And so, as I said, he has played for me many of these roles, and I'm grateful to both him and Angela, who Angela, in fact, was a second mother for all Costas' friends and colleagues. So for me as well. So I'm grateful to both of them. I have to say that Costas was the initiator of the Greek team working on metamaterials now, and he is the one that introduced us in this fascinating research topic that has brought us here these days, and he was, until very recently, a driving force for the fourth team. So, as most of you know, Costas has a great passion, a part of his family, also for science and for dance. He always used to, regarding the family, he always used to travel with Angela, and actually my impression is that he was feeling uncomfortable when he was not without Angela. And so many of Costas' friends, or most of Costas' friends, have experienced hospitality and generosity and warm heart of both Costas and Angela. Less people know Victor and his wife and daughter, but father was all, because, okay, of course, old kids, when they are grown up, they don't join the parents. But the father was always speaking about him, and he was proud about his achievements as a medical doctor. So Costas was passionate for science. He used to go from meeting to meeting, from conference to conference, non-stop, and reading, speaking, and this was actually the fuel of his life, it seems that it was. And also he was a fan of good food, good wine, and great dance. What I have to say is that I remember when I was traveling with him, he was always with some small notes about the best restaurant of the place, the best wine that one can have in this place. So it was actually easy to travel with him. So before starting with the people that they are plan to talk about Costas here, actually what we'll do is just to talk about all these aspects and other aspects of Costas' life, and to say some personal stories probably about Costas' influence in our career and life. But before that, I would like to, because unfortunately Angela and Victor could not be here with us today, probably neither remotely, they sent me a message, actually, to read to you. So I'm planning to read, and then I will invite Professor Economou to speak about Costas' bio. So on behalf of Soukoulis family, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the organizers, speakers, and participants of the conference for this touching event in Costas' memory. Members of the physics community were like a second family to Costas. He enjoyed every moment he could spend talking about the latest developments in the field or dancing late into the night after a conference dinner in Crete. We often accompanied him on these conference trips and got to know you and your families well. We cherish all the relationships we made over many decades. Even as his disease progressed, Costas would always seek out old physics friends and colleagues, whether visiting Charlottesville or Heraklion. It is touching to see these same people sharing their recollections, and we hope that Costas' memory can live on through his passion for physics and the many relationships he made. Thank you again for remembering him today. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Victor. It's a pleasure for us, if I can say this word now. So the first, I would like to invite Professor Economou here, who is the longest-term colleague, as far as I know, to Costas. And okay, I found it. Number 2. Okay, good. And
okay.
Then it's.
And we like
Okay.
to have the pointer as well.
If you like to have the pointer, here it is. I think it works. Okay. So it's yours.
Okay.
And then some water here.
I would like to say a few words about Costas Soukoulis, and what I would like to stress from the very beginning, that is a very dear friend for many, many years, over 50 years. I met Costas Soukoulis in '71 I was given at that time a series of lectures at Democritos Research Center in Athens, and Costas, as an undergraduate student, was attending these lectures. After his graduation, he got married his girlfriend from the high school, and I will say a few words later on about her. After he got married, he was ready for his graduate studies. This was at the University of Chicago in '75. At that time, I was visiting University of Chicago, giving a lecture in solid-state physics, and also Costas was a student in this course, an excellent student, I should say. During this period, for a period of 6 months or so, we got to know Costas very well and know also his young wife, Angela, and this started a close friendship which lasted for life. These are some pictures from the Chicago period. Costas is at the middle, asking for freedom and peace in Cyprus. If he was alive, he would still ask the same thing. And this is some of the friends of that time. You can recognize Costas, Angela, and NASA. This was the time of graduation of Costas, of course, with always Angela next to him. And as a close friend said, he looks here like an Orthodox priest with this kind of gown. Next step for Costas was for his postdoc years was at the University of Virginia. He initially started with John Ruvals and then continued with me. A very important event happened in Charlotte at the University of Virginia because they had their son Victor, who is now an MD professor at the University of Virginia, the same place he was born also. And these are one nice picture of Angela holding Victor, and another picture of Costas, I think one of his best, with Victor as a young boy. At UVA, Costas started a new direction in his research dealing with Anderson localization, transport properties, disorder systems. His next stop was for 3 years at Exxon Research Center. At that time, Exxon had collected a lot of top scientists because there was the petroleum crisis at that time, and they were thinking about becoming an energy company instead of an oil company. At that time, Costas moved a little off in his localization work. Instead of electrons, he considered classical waves and the simpler kind of classical waves. At that time also, when he was finishing his stay at Exxon, made 2 decisive moves. One was to join the faculty of the physics department at Iowa State University, and the other is to establish a strong and lasting collaboration with Fourth in Crete, Greece, which was his navy country, never forgotten that he has to offer something back to his country. Also, this gave him the opportunity to realize 2 of his talents. The first one was as a soccer player. At that time, I was watching him playing excellent soccer with much younger people, but never gave up, you see. He was competing as hard as always. The other, of course, already Maria talked about that, was his dance, and this was on one of his best positions. And you see the background from some people who may be around here today. Scientifically, at that time, Costas made a very decisive step. Instead of examining scalar waves for localization and gaps, he said that electromagnetic waves are the pipeline to be created already to have experimental result. So he decided, let's do something with a vector field, more complicated, but it was very important. In this move, he was helped because he brought his idea about moving this direction to his colleagues at Iowa State University. And they had the expertise to perform the necessary calculation for that. And as a result, that of course was an important step for the creation of the field of photonic crystals. And as a result, a series of landmark papers were produced, establishing him as one of the pioneers in the new field of photonic crystals. Scientifically also, he made about the same time, probably 1 or 2 years later, another very successful move in his career. And he recognized the importance of John Pendry's paper on negative index artificial materials, and he worked hard to set up research team both at Iowa State University and at Ford in this direction. As a result of all his effort, he produced about 100 publications in less than 10 years. Some of them are classic. He achieved all this because of his ability to recognize what is important very early in every field. His perseverance, his hard work, his unlimited energy, and his ability to establish productive collaborations. But Costas, above all, was a dear and reliable friend. So in about 2 years, from 2000 to 2010, Costas acted as a leader in a newly created Department of Material Science at the University of Crete, another offer to his native country. He also, I miss transparency there, he also set up collaborations, very successful, especially with Martin Wegener, who is one of the speakers after a while, and that was very important for realizing experimentally his ideas. Now this is the group of the Descartes group, which Descartes is the highest prize of the European Union for collaborative research, and you could see this. Martin also is there, David, who cannot come because of his illness, and of course Maria, always there. This was a series of pictures showing him that is recognized around the world and is traveling also around the world. So this is from Korea, this is Paris, Warsaw, Morocco, China, Norway, Cappadocia in Turkey on Costas' name day. He's there in the celebration as you see him. He also received, this is a picture from the honorary degree that he received from the Free University of Brussels, which he valued quite a lot. Of course, more recognition with several other rewards followed. One important, probably the most important work, that Soukoulis, Pendry, and Smith were the recipient of the 2013 APS James C. McGrody Prize for the discovery of metamaterials. That shows the level of achievement of Costas. And also he was a recipient of the Max Born Award by the Optical Society of America. He received also the Rolf Landauer Medal by International Etopim Association in 2015. Unfortunately, The same year, 2015, Costas was tentatively diagnosed with the neurological syndrome PPA. PPA stands from primitive progressive aphasia. That was a very deadly. You see that there was no cure for that. However, he continued to be active until around the years 2018, 19, I don't remember exactly, although the sign of this dreadful disease became more and more apparent. I remember Martin, who asked me, probably in 2016, in the same conference and this one, what is happening with Costas? You remember? Then years of silence followed until this year, who was the last one. On March 14, 2024, Angela called us with the sad news that Costas was gone. We were expecting like that as the situation becomes worse and worse, but always the death is something that is difficult to accept. However, his contribution to science will persist, and his life path as a trusted and dear colleague to us all will live on. With that, I would like to leave the podium to the next speaker. Who is that? Εδώ είναι το τέτοιο, εδώ δεν άλλαζαν.
Ναι, να βάλετε το...
Ποιο?
Next slide in this... No. Το επόμενο slide όμως από αυτός που είναι μικρό. Okay. So, Martin. So next, Costas' colleague who will talk about him and the relation is Martin Wegener. You all know him.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, and good evening. I lost a friend. I guess many of us lost a friend, and we all lost a leader in the fields of disordered media, photonic crystals, and metamaterials. I know Costas much shorter than Professor Economou. I met him in the year 2002, I believe. He obtained one of these prestigious Humboldt Prizes in Germany that allows scientists from abroad to travel for extended periods of time, and he came to Karlsruhe many times, actually. And we spent a lot of time together. That was somewhat fortunate because I had been working in a completely different field for many years, ultra-fast spectroscopy, and to be honest, I was sick of that field and I was looking for a change. And it was fantastic that Costas came and familiarized me with some new, fresh ideas, I felt. I would like to speak a little bit about two of them. Professor Economou already mentioned photonic crystals. In fact, one of Costas Soukoulis' famous paper is the one on the woodpile photonic crystal. And if he was here, he would tell you the sad story how it ended up in a not so prestigious journal, but actually cited very well this paper. And if you look back today, that's one of the very few three-dimensional photonic crystal architectures that survived. And he, with some other authors, was the inventor of that structure. And that was one of the first collaborations we had. We felt we had some interesting fabrication technology at the time to make such structures that would have photonic band gaps, complete photonic band gaps in 3 dimensions at visible frequencies, which was a big thing at the time. Today, I guess nobody cares about that anymore, but it was a big thing scientifically, and we published quite a few papers on that, and eventually it did work. And that reminds me to say that he always had the spirit of collaborations between theory and experiment, and many of us are glad that we are working in this community where it's kind of self-understood that theorists and experimentalists do something together. That is not at all the case in all fields of science, but it's a fantastic thing in our field here of metamaterials. The second thing that he got excited me about, and it took him a year or so, the first time I didn't care at all, he excited me about metamaterials. The first time I didn't understand it, I guess, but then he excited me about split ring resonators and the idea of also bringing magnetic responses to optics, which was unheard of in optics at the time. And that was in the early days of the field of metamaterials, where ideas were on the table from the microwave regime. David Smith and others had published papers on that, and the race was on to miniaturize these split ring resonators and related designs and bring them again to visible frequency operation, which some people argued wouldn't be possible, but after a couple of years of work together with Costas, it was possible, and was always nice to directly compare experimental results and theoretical results and see how good or not the structures were. These are 2 things I would like to say scientifically, but as Professor Economy pointed out, Costas was traveling a lot. Actually, he was traveling all the time, it seemed to me, and almost all the time with his wife, Angela. So my family and they got together many times and had beautiful dinners together. And it's amazing, if you could ask my daughters today what they remember of Costas and Angela, they could tell you all kinds of stories. It's actually interesting. One of them being, that's from Angela. My daughters used to not like to eat many things at dinner. But then Angela tried to convince them that they should at least try, like along the lines, oh, you got to develop a taste. And my kids can imitate that much better. So it was actually a very close family thing together with Costas. And for many years, he led a European Union project that Professor Economou touched upon on optical metamaterials that was very successful at the end. So that is about what I wanted to say. Maybe I end by saying that we are lucky that there are many nice scientists and colleagues in our community, and not all of them are nice, but many nice. There are some that are very nice, and there has been Costas, the super nice guy, and it's sad that he is no longer with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Okay. Next is Ekmel Osbey. You know him.
Okay. Good evening. I also know Costas since 1992. So can I switch to my presentation? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So again, I didn't copy this from Maria. Actually, this was what I have done for when I think it was his 60th birthday in Crete. Remember, Maria? So I have a similar talk about that. He was first my mentor and then colleague and eventually friend. So I like to share a few words about my experience with Costas through the years. So 1992, I just finished Stanford University. I got married to a woman, a Turkish woman in Iowa State University who was working on her PhD, and we have a boy, 5-month boy, and I have to find a job in Iowa State University. Then I was looking around all the departments, and I met Costas and also Kai Min Ho, Gerrit Hatter, you know. And I heard they are working on something called photonic crystals. What is photonic crystals? 1992. I said, and they offered me a job as a postdoc. I said, yes, but I wasn't very sure what is it. At the end, it turned out to be a very good decision for me scientifically and also, you know, as in terms of friendship. So I worked with Costas for nearly 3 years, and it was very productive, both in terms of science, and those who listen to my talk, they know about the C index. I made my C index 4 at the end of 3 years, which means that I had 4 children when I left Iowa State University for a professorship in Turkey. Since then, I'm there. And in terms of scholarship, again, Costas was a very good mentor. I learned a lot from him, besides the friendship that I will later talk about. So this was the paper that Martin was talking about. So we were able to, actually, they came with the idea, but I was the one who experimented that this layer-by-layer structure had a full band gap. But we couldn't get it published in PRX, so we have to split it into other journals, and both of them were quite well cited. So I had a good introduction, or start, thanks to Costas, when I became a professor. And then now I'm a professor, I call him a colleague after 1995, where I became a professor, assistant professor in Buchanan University. And we have a lot of projects with Costas. Again, he was working both in Crete, Greece, who was a member of EU, and Turkey just applied. At least we can work as partners in EU projects. So we have like 3, 4, 5 projects. Actually, most of my friends here, Nikolai, Metamorphose, Sergey, that was the start of the metamaterials. Actually, I heard about metamaterials first from Costas, and then there was a meeting in Switzerland. I heard Professor Penry giving a talk about splitting resonators. I still remember that it looks like the Swiss logs, whatever it is, his instruction. So I started working, and Costas was there to push us. Again, he was giving us the ideas, and we were doing the experimental work, and we had a lot of projects, which eventually, actually, we were able to get a Nature paper, thanks to Costas' ideas, that we can use these structures for negative refraction. It was also there, 2003, that's my mistake. And eventually, this became the Descartes Prize that was mentioned earlier. So I also, thanks to Costas, I was able to meet Professor Penry, Professor Wegener, and of course, Maria was there, along with other colleagues. So we had a good establishment of mathematics research in Europe and also in the US. And of course, we have more and more pressure, and became a friendship from my point of view. Speaking of Angela, I remember we had a meeting in Istanbul. It was a nice hotel in the center of Istanbul, Maria may remember. And, you know, we were showing each other. Of course, we gave a very good room to Costas. And Costas was very proud. I said, Costas, come and see my room. Because I was the organizer, but just joking. But then when I visited his room, Angela showed me that she brought this scale, you know, to check her weight. I said, what? You bring a scale? She said, all the time. I said, very good idea. From that moment, I always bring my own scale. Actually, there's one in my hotel room. I always check my weight. I learned it from Angela. So it was a lot of joint fun, a lot of good friendship. We had a lot of, again, meetings until he got sick. And this is a picture that was shown earlier from Cappadocia. We had a very good time there, very good friend. And of course, you have to dance. There is no way. You have to dance when Costas is around. Okay. So thanks. Again, Costas was first a mentor, and then a colleague, and eventually a friend. And we will, I think, always remember and miss him. Thank you. So now I think I'm the chair. Okay, Martin, why don't you come here?
Actually, this was not my slide, but that's good. No, that's fine.
You don't have to pay.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Very good. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank Maria and Ekmel for organizing this special event for us to pay tribute to our dear friend, Costas Soukoulis, who... Oh, yeah. To pay tribute to our dear friend, Costas Soukoulis, who left us 6 months ago. I first met Costas about 20 years ago. It was around year 2003 and in a conference. Now, I'd known of Costas, of course, because I was familiar with some of his pioneering work before I met him in person. But really, when we met in 2003, he was so kind to me, and we became friends immediately, and our friendship grew over time. Then about 2005, both of us became part of a team working on DARPA projects, and that team was put together by our mutual friend, Minas Tanilian from Boeing Corporation, and that gave us the opportunity that we could work together. So for 4 or 5 years, we were constantly, working, interacting with each other, and our scientific discussion, was always, very lively and exciting. I learned a lot from him. He was a brilliant scientist, as all of us know. And he was always very patient in discussing different scientific aspects together. So I really cherish those moments that we had together. He was, internationally renowned scientist, a fantastic mentor to his students and postdocs, amazing friend and colleague, as we all know, by the way, from our experience interacting with him, and a wonderful human being. On the scientific side, of course, as we know, he was really a towering figure in various aspects of light-matter interaction and condensed matters. It was mentioned, in Anderson localization, metamaterial, photonic crystals, and various aspects of wave physics. On the personal side, as was also mentioned by others, he loved life and he lived it to its fullest by a wonderful, joy for dancing, for great food, and many aspects that he was enjoying. Speaking of that, in July of 2014, my wife and I visited Costas and Angela in Athens, and for a few days, if you go to the next slide, yes, here, thank you. And so Costas and Angela were wonderful hosts. In Athens, they took us around, they showed us different tourist areas. And when Costas found out that my wife likes, seafood, he said, I have a treat for you. I'm going to take you to a very special restaurant, he said. And he took us to this restaurant, as you will see, it's a very interesting restaurant, very close to the water. A fish actually comes very close to your table. And it was a very, very unique moment and a very memorable event. It's really sad that we lost a dear friend. The world is a smaller place without him. He will be dearly missed, but his scientific vision, his technical contribution, and his pioneering ideas will live on forever. May his soul rest in peace, and his fond memories will live in our hearts and minds. Thank you.
So, next in line is Vladimir.
Okay. Well, the truth is, I never collaborated with Costas, so we don't have a single paper with him. Actually, we were competitors. He was working closely with Martin, and there was a race to demonstrate these first optical metamaterials, including negative index metamaterials. But the truth is, it's never precluded us from being really close colleagues and friends. He was my dear friend, and that actually tells a lot about the community in general. I happen to go to many different conferences not related to metamaterials. I should say that this is a very, very special community. It's amazing community. And Costa, of course, was a big part, a leader. He inspired, to a large extent, this community. His research contribution will stay in the history of science, so that's unquestionable. So this actually short presentation, few slides, is done together with my wife and dear colleague, Sasha Poltasova. So, and Costas was our dear friend, as I said, and we never forget Costa, and we are particularly grateful to him for making all conferences fun, for sharing nice drinks and arguments, for sharing ideas and special moments. Costas was at our wedding, and therefore it's even more important part of our life. And at conference and weddings. So I just wanted to add to say that Costas was the heart of this community. He was a very special person, and indeed he will always stay with us, and we will never forget him. Thank you, Costas, for all what you did.
So next in line, Professor Tassin.
Okay, close to the microphone, yeah. It's okay. Costas has been very, very important for me, for my career, for my personality, also for my ideas about science and academia. And so I talked, I'm a younger, representing a little bit younger generation, some of the last generation of his students. And I talked with a few other people today, and they essentially said the same thing. So Costas has been important for a lot of people. But let me sketch why has Costas been so important for me. Let me sketch a little bit how I got to know him. So I started my PhD in Brussels. And then I started working on metamaterials. There weren't any other people working on metamaterials in Brussels at the time. So I had started my PhD. I went to an advisor I wanted to work with, and I told her she was into mobility and traveling around. And I went to her and I said, like, look, I want to do my PhD with you, but you're not going to send me anywhere. You know, I don't do things. That's nothing for me. After a couple of years, 1 or 2 years, I felt a little alone in Brussels. And so I went back to her and I said, like, look, maybe if you could find a place I could visit or so. And then she said, well, I met Costas Soukoulis at a conference. And so then soon after, I visited for my first time Crete. This was a very difficult thing for me to decide. I know I was about to go on the plane, and I was like, is this the right decision here? Maybe I should just go home. But I went here, and Costas made sure that there was a very nice place with all very, very nice people in Crete. And sort of that made me realize, and Costas is really responsible for that, made me realize that traveling around is nice, that it's a very, very, was all a very, very nice experience. And so I looked in my pictures here around it, and the first picture I took when I was in Crete happens to be the same as what you have on the conference poster here. This was the very first picture I took. Of course, I was here at the Institute, very, very nice place here. And then I met a lot of people here, very, very nice people. We have Professor Economo on the slides here, Costas. Then I didn't stop there. I did my PhD, and then after that, Costas told me sort of, why are you not coming to Iowa and join my group there? And so that's what I did. I went to Iowa. Yeah. I had a fantastic time at Iowa also. There I got to know Costas in a much deeper way. He has someone mentioned he had the ability to see what's important. Very, very sharp mind, very, very smart mind. I remember I presented him something, calculations I had did, and then he wanted to get my slides in his hand, and then he looked like 10 seconds in it, that's how I remember it, and then he found the only mistake. Very, very smart person, very, very smart mind. Next thing I want to mention is that since we had this, he had helped us also when I was in Brussels. When I came to Crete, I was actually doing my PhD in Brussels. Costas has helped us so much. He had done so wonderful work. So I lifted the idea to my advisor if maybe Costas would be a good person to the university could give an honorary doctorate to. And I didn't know if anything would come for that. But with Costas, I was asked sort of, okay, can you sort of get his CV in a way that sort of you don't ask him to get his CV? So I did that, and then sort of, with Costas' achievements, this was just flying too. And so a year later, and I didn't find these nice pictures that you have, but this is a picture I found. It's a little bit fuzzy there, but that's Costas being interviewed for his honorary degree. And besides him there is the current rector of the university in Brussels. And this was on a dinner here after we will again see Costas, as some other people have said, always, with Angela besides him. Costas was not only a top scientist, clever mind, generous. I forgot to say, I think Costas is a very, very generous person. But Costas also understood the art of enjoying life. And I think also several people have said that here. I have very, very fond memories of different conferences, but also parties we had in both here and in Ames. And always he managed to gather the most interesting and nice people around him. And sort of I have a few pictures also here. Is that a conference? I think this is a conference in Crete. Here we have two pictures from Iowa, and sort of what I sort of remember most is this Easter parties he had at home with a barbecue. These are memories that I will never that I will always cherish. So last thing I want to say is that to Costas, and I've written this hundreds of times to him, but I say it once more here in public. So thank you very much, and we are going to miss you.
So we have two speakers from Zoom. I understand that Professor Sheng is online. So if we can get him from Zoom, so he can say a few things about Costas.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear, but we don't see you yet. But we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, Costas was a good friend. We overlapped in the 1980s while he was at Exxon Corporate Research. We collaborated on the topic of electron localization under a strong electric field. As a sign of Costas' future career, That collaboration led to a physical review letter publication. After he left Exxon, Costas continued to make news. He was one of the 3 authors on that famous 1990 publication with Kai-Ming Ho and C.T. Chen that settled the existence of photonic bandgap in artificially constructed wood-pile structures. In fact, before that publication, there was a article in Nature that stated something like photonic crystal by dust. But that paper essentially settled that issue. And in the early 2000s, Costas collaborated with John Pendry, Dave Smith, and others on electromagnetic metamaterials, leading to important publications that later earned him many accolades and awards from the global academic community. He was one of the most highly cited physicists. His Greek origin also earned him eminent connections in Greek academic institutions. Owing to his links, Costas has invited me to conferences and symposiums held on Greek islands multiple times, and that left a deep impression on me. Among these, I would like to mention one occasion that stood out in my memory. It was at one of the conferences. During the conference dinner held outdoors at a beautiful evening with open ocean in the background and a gentle sea breeze. Towards the end of that dinner, Costas stood up and announced that he would show us the Greek dancing. I had first seen Greek dancing in a movie called Zorba the Greek, with Anthony Quinn being the actor. But Costas had outdone Anthony Quinn that evening. Accompanied by music, he showed us the intricate footsteps with both arms outstretched, and suddenly, at the height of the music climax, he suddenly squatted down and hit both his palms on the ground, then stood up and continued the footsteps at an accelerated pace until, at the end, he repeated the squatting and then smashed a plate on the ground. Until today, that image of Costas has stuck in my mind. Whenever his name is mentioned, I thought of Costas' warmth as a friend, the vitality as a man, and his creativity and productivity as a physicist. His passing is indeed a big loss to us all. Thank you.
Okay, so we are still waiting for William Ross to get connected, but he's on a train. But in the meantime, if there is anyone in the audience who wants to share a few words about Costas, please join. Any? Please. I'm sure there will be many.
I'm gonna lighten this up.
But you should introduce yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Vasilis Armandaris. I'm a physicist but turned into astrophysics, so I have never collaborated with Costas professionally, but I received a phone call from him in March of 1989 telling me that I was admitted at Iowa State, and that a graduate student was also admitted who would work for him, George Kopidakis, and that would be a great idea to go there. And it is a fantastic place, that's what he said. He exaggerated, but as most of you know. But thanks to him, I went to Iowa State, and it was, I'll mention a few words afterwards about that. But through that experience and the fact that I was in Ames, I visited Crete because Professor Economou was visiting there, and I gave a talk sometime in '92. And some 15 years later, I came back to Crete as an assistant professor in the Department of Physics. Now, the story I want to mention about Costas was that when he made this phone call, I was deeply flattered because a professor from the US calls you, right, and tells you that you are admitted. And of course, I had not really realized that the Greek community in Ames was very small. Costas had a kid, and he wanted to have more people to come to parties and have dinners from Angela and play cards during Christmas and New Year's. And so he would exercise his competitive nature. The interesting story I want to mention to you has to do with the fact that when I was admitted, I arrived in Iowa, but I didn't think that anyone was waiting for me, and I was checking through the schedule, and according to the schedule, I had to appear in the physics department at some point a couple of days later. Now, the story behind it was that Costas had encouraged another graduate student to come the year before, who came to Iowa, experienced the first 6 months of the winters in the Midwest, came back to Greece over Christmas, and never came back. Without saying anything. So they had the TA meeting in the spring. In January, the student wasn't there. They asked Costas, you recruited a Greek student, can you see what's happening? He calls his parents home in Athens, and the student picks up the phone and tells me, well, I don't really want to come back. So sure enough, when I arrived in Iowa, and I was waiting for the day to appear to the physics department. I was not aware that the schedule had changed, and in fact, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, the welcoming of the incoming class had come a couple of days earlier, and I wasn't there. So the vice chair of the department went again to Costas and said, this graduate student that you recommended to us, he hasn't shown up. So what Costas did again is he called my parents back home, and he calls my parents and he says, where is Vasilis? Now you have to realize that it was the first time I had left home. I left it on the day of my birthday. I was 22 at the time, and my parents were not at all enthusiastic that I left Greece. So my mother tells Costas, look, he left, so he should be somewhere there. And Costas said, well, don't worry about it. Probably he was lost somewhere on campus. And the whole expression was in Greek, with the only word that was in English was the word campus. Now, the Greeks may realize that the word campus in Greek is the plains. And my parents, I had described to my parents that the Midwest is, plains with wheat and corn and whatnot. So my parents couldn't really realize that this Greek professor from the US casually says that their son was lost somewhere on the plains, but it's not a big deal. So when I arrived in the physics department a day or two later, and I arrived there, and then I realized that I had my mailbox. The secretary saw me kind of weird because she knew that I was late. So she called the vice chair, Professor Leacock, and he told me, let's go and see Professor Soukoulis. Costas looks at me and said, the first thing that he said, well, welcome, why don't we make a phone call to talk to your parents? So we talked to my parents. They were relieved that I was alive and I wasn't lost completely. And then we went to the class where the incoming students were there, and then that's where I met George. We had a fantastic tan, the same way that he had here, and he wasn't wearing socks in his shoes, and probably he does the same thing now. So it was a great pleasure meeting Costas. Actually, he was very, very helpful. He was on my thesis committee. He realized that I wasn't doing very interesting things at the time because he told me that he was not planning to read my thesis at all. But he attended the defense, And he was supportive because he actually thought that I was doing something worthy, even though it wasn't photonic crystals and it was astrophysics. So it was a great pleasure and a great friend that we all miss dearly, and he has been a friend ever since. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think we need more people who want to talk until we are get connected. John, maybe you want to come say a few words? No? Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. We have a connection. And okay, you can continue. Come.
I will do now?
Sure.
Okay.
Anyone, Maria, online? Not yet.
Okay. So hi, my name is Lefteris Vidorikis. I was a Costas student. So I met Costas 1994 when I went to Iowa. I remember checking the names of the professors, not knowing, who I'm going to meet there. So I had no idea Costas was there, of course. So like Costas Soukoulis, this sounds Greek. Maybe he's Greek-American, maybe he's somebody, I could talk to. Yeah, he was Greek. The first thing I remember is that following the advice of another Greek professor, I gave the qualifiers exams on the 0th try. So this was a free try, and it went well. And so I had a party. And so this is where Costas, a great human, a great person, simplicity, love of life, it's basically mixing in the best possible way business and pleasure. He comes to my party with Angela, the big professor. Very happy, very casual, enjoying, congratulations. And at some point, tomorrow come through my office. You should work for me. So this is how it started. Always the mentor that will give you the best excitement, advice, push forward, really making you love what you're doing. And, how to do the science, how to go, eventually get the PhD, which of course had also a prerequisite. You have to dance. You cannot get away without it. And the whole thing about how the community was coming around Costas. So my interaction with Costas was basically the 5 years of my PhD. After that, I left, and we were basically just friends, not scientifically doing many things together. But I remember the whole community, especially the Greek community. Every year, APS meetings, Spiros was there all the time. It was always Costas with the two wingmen, Hadjipanagis and Kousis, always going 2 days in advance or 1 day in advance, scanning the restaurants, arranging the best place, and then Wednesday night, always the whole Greek community and friends going and having a blast, okay? And these are the memories of the young people who really, especially from Greece, right, and other places, that you think the professor is somebody really to respect and be fearful, and you are nobody, and then finding somebody who is a human. As a scientist, he's the top that you can find and really pushes you forward what life, and really good life and good science, not science from the point of just doing science, but doing something important and really creating something of value. So this is what I always remember. Always Costas dancing chamiko and zebekiko with his favorite song, which was like "Θα ζήσω ελεύθερο πουλί και το βοτανικό μάγκες." Anyway, we will miss Costas. Thank you.
So he cannot talk. Because, So then we will finish soon. Oh, you want to talk? Okay, sure.
I wanted to say something about a different aspect of Costas. I'm Spiros Anastasiadis. You haven't heard of me because I'm a chemical engineer doing polymer science, so I don't belong here, I guess. After I did my PhD at Princeton, then I went to IBM Almaden Research Center, 1988, 89. And suddenly one day I received a phone call. And he says, I'm Costas Soukoulis, I'm a professor at Iowa, and I also collaborate with Forth in Greece, a new establishment, a new institution that was there, and I'm calling you to tell you that if you ever think about going back to Greece, that the University of Crete and Forth are the places to go. That was 88 or 89. Indeed, at the end of 89, came back to Greece, and I looked around to do my army. I did my military service, 18 months. And during that time, I was looking around, and I came to Crete to discuss about possibilities with the polymer people there. And I think I was introduced also by them to Professor Economou of the time. But then later on, I was elected at the physics department, chemical engineer, doing polymer physics, became assistant professor at the physics department. And I found many years later that Costas Soukoulis was one person who said very good things from what he heard about me from the Exxon years to the people at the physics department. So, and that probably helped in them choosing me, and the rest is history, I would say. I enjoyed very much knowing him and working with him during the time he was in Crete at the material science department. Working meaning not as a colleague doing research, but on other aspects. And I enjoyed, as a director of the institute for 10 years, for the first period I enjoyed a lot the overhead that was coming out of his grants. So that was very helpful in some of the big grants that him, together with Professor Economou, with Maria, and the other people brought. So I just wanted to mention a different side, how his influence on recruiting people to go back to Crete. He did that also during his time at the material science department, and we all miss him, and I just wanted to mention this other aspect of his contribution to the Greek science. Thank you.
So Maria, no chance about VOS, right? No, okay. So again, I would say it was a sad evening, also a happy evening. We all remember the good memories about him. And so we like to finish the night with some more good memories. If they can put our last.
You are invited for a small reception outside after the last line. And we have to say also that Costas was a supporter of the metamaterials conference. He used to be in almost all metamaterials conferences. And you press.
στο minuto de δουλειά.
Okay, again, thanks for all of you who were here tonight. So we have a small reception outside, I understand, Maria, right? So let's go out. Good night, good evening.